Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Tarot with Training Wheels, lesson number 3. If you're new here, welcome. I do recommend that you start this class with lesson 1. There is a link to the full Tarot with Training Wheels playlist in the cards and in the description box down below, so you don't lose track of the lessons in this series. All right, are you ready to really dive into it? We're going to be beginning with the Major Arcana. So here's what you need before we get started. Make sure that you have your tarot deck, the one that you're going to be adding your keywords to. That is the entire basis of the Tarot with Training Wheels method. So I'm going to share with you one expansive keyword that I think really works. And before we dive into the keywords I'm going to be sharing with you, a little caveat. You are more than welcome to choose a completely different keyword as long as you choose one primary keyword. So if you sit with this video and you're like, I don't really like the keywords that Lisa chose, choose something else. Refer to some of your favorite tarot books like 78 Degrees of Wisdom or Kitchen Table Tarot to come up with a keyword that makes sense to you. The important thing is that you write one keyword on your card. So with that said, make sure you have your decks that you will be modifying or a stack of note cards, whatever you're going to be using to make note of your keywords. Maybe something to take notes on if you are the type to want to take notes. And a pen or something to mark your card. My cards have already been marked, so let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about the Major Arcana, and we're going to be going through cards 0 through 10. That is the Fool through the Wheel. And I'm going to share with you my perspective, how I see this keyword in both of these cards, and then we're just going to go through all 11 of the cards that we are going through today. So we begin with the Fool, and the keyword I have chosen here is risk. Webster's dictionary says that the meaning of the word risk is possibility of loss or injury, or someone or something that creates or suggests a hazard. Now, I feel like in most versions of the Fool that I've seen, we have a primary character who's traveling pretty light. Usually the character is carrying some kind of a bag or satchel with their meager few belongings, and they often have an animal companion with them. In this Druidcraft Tarot, our animal companion is this dog. Now, often in the Fool, we see somebody heading right towards some kind of danger, or we get the idea that they're headed right off a cliff, like in this case with the Fool, just literally marching, not really looking where he's going. He's looking up, not down, and really just ready to walk off the edge of this cliff. We definitely get the idea of risk, and risk is one of those words that I feel like really is expansive and allows us to explore a number of interpretations for the Fool. For starters, this could be an intentional risk. He could be very well aware of the risk, but he knows that the payoff is worth the effort, so he's going to go for it, even if it makes him look like a fool to others. Conversely, he might not be paying attention at all. This might be a total situation where he is not at all aware of the risk he's undertaking and his animal companion is trying to let him know. There's a number of ways to look at the artwork on the Fool, but I love the word risk because it can really be taken a number of ways. When this comes up in a reading, I can really see, okay, there's something around risk. Either we need to take a risk or we should take a risk, or we're taking unnecessary risks. There's a couple different ways to read with it, and therefore I find risk to be a very expansive keyword for this card. Now, with that said, let's take a look at the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition. Here we see a very similar scene. We have our character here traveling lightly and his animal companion. The risk in this particular version of the card is implied. We don't actually see the cliff edge, although I think this rock here is meant to sort of imply the cliff edge. But if I think of this as risk, let's take the cliff out of it for a moment. Let's assume that risk in this case is simply just traveling with so few belongings, basically being so ill prepared that if something happens, if there's a weather shift, if suddenly he needs something that he hasn't brought with him, he's in trouble. So there's still an element of risk. There's still an element of putting himself out there, even without the cliff. Now let's take a look at the Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot, where we have this cute little baby deer. Whoop, I threw the card. This cute little baby deer. So the deer is the animal. We also have a little butterfly. Now, the risk here is really simply in trying to walk. If you have ever seen a baby deer, which I believe is called a calf? No. What's a baby deer called? Foal, right? No, that's a horse. Okay, well, bonus points to you if you know what a baby deer is called. But if you've ever seen one try to walk, even in the movie Bambi, you're aware that just those first steps are super risky because you can still fall. There's also risk at this point in just being this baby deer out at night. There's still a staff here and a little satchel laid by the side, so we still get the idea that there was some sort of journey planned, and frankly, a journey when you're still just barely learning to walk is probably not the wisest move, but some really amazing things might be discovered along the way. So we still get that element of risk. So maybe just take a moment to consider the keyword risk. If you like that keyword for the Fool, add it to your card now, or compare it to the deck that you're using. See if you see risk in your artwork, and if not, see if you see a different word that you think is still just as encompassing, and go with that. But I'm going to stick with risk. It's the one I found to be the most universal across all the decks I've looked at. All right, so time for the next card. We're going to take a look next at the Magician. Now, for the Magician, I personally really love the primary keyword manifest. Webster's dictionary says that the definition of manifest as a verb is to make evident or certain by showing or displaying. So one could also look at manifest as a way of as a display of change, or a display of power or prowess. So in that way, we could look at manifest in that direction if we want to. I like to think of it in its more sort of new agey element of creating the change or effect that we are desiring. I feel like manifesting is such a great word for our Magician. We see a figure here who's standing at a table, one hand up and one below, which has significance all its own. It's a symbol of as above, so below, the Hermetic saying. But more than that, I feel like it always reminds me of the fact that the Magician is consciously sort of channeling his personal power to create a life that he desires, or to create a desired result, the very essence of working magic. I like the word manifest because it's a word I work with in my own practice to try to bring about desired change in my life. I try to manifest change. And manifesting could be a magical concept, one that we do magical work around, or it could be an actual literal concept where we are taking an idea and manifesting it in reality by doing the necessary steps that are required to make it a reality. I feel like it's a word that can take me in many different directions. I also think that it implies that there's an element of, sure, you have some skill, but you're not necessarily coming at this from a place of skill, but rather a deep desire to create change. So you may know the right resources to access, but you may not have this huge foundation of knowledge. We're still fairly early in the major arcana. This is only the second card, the Fool and now the Magician. So it's almost like power just being realized, and then that way I feel like manifest works really, really well. Now, typical things I like to see in the artwork on a Magician card is I love to see each of the 4 tools of the minor arcana represented on the card, because I feel like that's a great reminder that the Magician has access to all the resources should he choose to use them. And so we see that here. There's a sword, a coin, a wand, and a cup on his altar space here. And if we look to the left to the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition, we also see a blade, some spheres or discs, a cup, and he's holding a wand. So all the tools are still present. I also think it's interesting that we often see a table here, which to me implies doing the work, like getting to work, going to the table, doing the work, which again, manifesting, trying to create our desired change. In the Magician card of the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, let's bring it up so you can really see the artwork. Here we have a raven or a crow. Also, all of the tools are here, and there's these beautiful little lightning bugs around, giving that sense of, I think, access to spiritual knowledge or magic. So again, I feel like manifest really, really works here. So take a moment to consider the keyword manifest, or to, based on what you do know or what I've mentioned about the meaning of this card, see if you can think of ways or other keywords that might work, and choose one to add to your card. In my experience, when the Magician comes up in a spread, it often points to a need to really make the most of what we have, to put into action our desired outcomes, to really work towards a goal, to be willing to believe that we have all that it takes to accomplish it, to manifest our desired change. And so with that in mind, I really feel like manifest is a great keyword. There are lots of other keywords that could work too, though. So really think about what might work for you and add that to your card. I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the High Priestess. Some common things that I'm used to seeing in the card is some sort of book of knowledge or secrets or some sort of paper that implies that she has access to some sort of knowledge that I don't have. I also like to see some columns next to her, some type of reference to dark and light, but I don't always see that in every single card, and that's fine. But the main thing I really look for is that feeling of mystery and of magic. I know that the High Priestess for me really speaks to the unknown and to secrets, and that is why I really like to work with the keyword intuition. One of the definitions of intuition according to the Webster's Dictionary is a quick and ready insight, something that comes to mind without a lot of like sort of thinking and processing, but something that just comes to you, a cognition in a way. And I really love that definition of intuition. I feel like whenever the High Priestess comes up in a reading, I really see or get messages around needing to trust one's inner voice or paying attention to signs, things that are not quite so obvious, not quite on the surface. Whereas I feel like the Magician makes use of what is right in front of him, I feel like the High Priestess makes use of what is unseen. And so I kind of look for hints to that sort of deep esoteric knowledge in the card. And it's why I like the word intuition. I also feel like when this comes up in a reading, it's really easy to go, okay, you really need to pay attention. You need to notice the things that are less noticeable in a reading. That'd be a great advice card or advice way to read the High Priestess. But I love the term intuition. I love that it gives me a lot of room to roam with the meaning, and I really appreciate that. I do see the same sort of scene and symbols in the other two cards on the table. In the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition, we have a woman here seated on a throne. There's the crescent moon to the side, and she's holding a book of knowledge. To me, those are the main things. It's like, oh yeah, crescent moon, book of knowledge, secrets, intuition, right? There's that like knowledge that I can't quite access or can't quite see unless I tune in just right. Kind of like adjusting the dial on a radio station to get past the crackle, to get to that perfect, clear tone. To me, that's what it's like trying to dial in on your intuition. Like at first, you might think the sound is fine, but there's a bit of a crackle, and then you start to refine it. So there's a process of really tuning in that I think is really important. So maybe for you, tuning in works, or listening to your inner voice works, or maybe it's secrets. But in this case, I've chosen to use intuition. I definitely see the same symbols as well in the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. Here we have a hawk, I think. I'm really bad with animal identification, holding onto a scroll, and there's the crescent moon. Again, my main symbols are here. The moon often makes me think of intuition and like sort of things that are hidden, as does this rolled up little scroll. I get the idea that this creature knows something that I don't, and so if I tune in, if I'm careful, if I pay attention, if I dial in, I might just get access to the same information. So with that said, maybe just think about what stands out to you from that, from the idea of secrets or of hidden knowledge or of intuition or psychic awareness, anything along those lines that feels resonant for you. Again, don't be afraid to refer to a book and to look at what things jump out at you about the meaning of the card. But in general, I think intuition is a great word. I'm going to move on now to the Lady. This is the Empress card. Let's take a look at our other two as well here. The word I've chosen for the Empress is create. Now, Webster's Dictionary says that the definition of create is to bring into existence, to invest with a new form, office, or rank, to produce or bring about by a course of action or behavior. And I think all of these definitions, this whole idea of to make or to bring into existence, is such a great word for the Empress. We often see the Empress showing some sort of motherhood, some sort of pregnancy or nurturing energy. And that's because the Empress is really sort of the epitome of creation in the tarot. And when you think of creation, that can be anything. It doesn't have to be an actual human baby, right? It could be a creative project. It could be a work project. It could be a desired change in one's life, similar to the Magician. Only here, she really births and nurtures and takes care of whatever it is that she is creating. So in the Empress, I really see the word create. I feel like create is such a expansive word, and it gives me a lot of room to explore the meaning of the card. I see creation where I see pregnancy, and I feel like that's an easy cue to what the card means, but there's more here. There's the bounty of the wheat that she holds in one hand and the harvest that she holds in the cornucopia in the other. She has access to the water, and I feel like there is something about her that has this deep femininity about it, which has a real power and strength. As an Empress, or in this case, the Lady, we have access to sovereignty and power as well. So there's a real kind of queendom in general about this card that I think is really beautiful. When I move over to the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition, the card here just really looks like it's more about feminine power than about creation. But really, if one is the ruler of one's kingdom, and is in that seat of power, we can create, right? We can create change. We can create whole new societal rules. There's so much at our fingertips. And when we look over here to the oak, ash, and thorn, we have a rabbit. And this is great because, as anybody knows, rabbits tend to procreate very prolifically. And here we have our Empress bunny sitting on top of a log with the staff of power here, the symbol of Venus. It's really great. We could dive into all the symbols, but the point here is we have this idea of creation, right? This bunny has created these other bunnies. It's a reminder that when the Empress energy shows up in a reading, it's about what we're creating or nurturing at the time. And I think that's a really powerful way to look at this card. Again, like with the others, I encourage you to look back at some books or look at the definition of the Empress or the Lady in your tarot deck that you're working with. See if any other keywords jump out at you, but I like the word create. Whatever keyword you choose, go ahead and add it to your card. I'm going to move on now to the Emperor. In this case, in the Druidcraft Tarot, it's called the Lord. And the word I've chosen for the Emperor is control. There's so many words that work here: power, control, authority. The Emperor, or the Emperor's equivalent that you find in the tarot, is that ultimate male power in the deck, just as the Empress is the ultimate female power in the deck. And you can look at that female male or active passive, or however you want to look at those two words. We're looking at sort of the duality of power in these two cards. And I really see this more masculine energy as control. Control can be good. It can be somebody is very well controlled, but it can also be controlling, and it can speak to that aspect of the word. Webster's dictionary defines control as to exercise restraining or directing influence over, or to have power over. And I think those are both really good words for the Emperor, or in this case, the Lord. I'm looking for regality and a sense of being really in charge, and somebody that would be considered a ruler or ruling class in this card to understand its meaning. And when it comes up in a reading, I usually look at matters around what I have responsibility over, or what my client might have responsibility over. I look at where control or the energy of control may be at play in this situation. So oftentimes the shadowy side of the Lord or the Emperor could be one's trying too hard to control or dominate a situation, right? So there's lots of different ways to look at this, but I definitely want to see this sort of kingly energy or this controlling, ruling influence. Definitely see it here in the Druidcraft. He looks very regal and he's sitting on a throne. He looks very severe. I think that really works in this case. And the Emperor in the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition also looks incredibly regal. He looks like he's definitely in charge. We have similar symbols across the cards. I love the Emperor in the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. This stag is just beautiful. Definitely looks like he is in charge of the woods, that he is looking over everybody, that he is a protector. And control is also to some degree taking responsibility for whatever it is that you have control over. In this case, obviously, the domain, one's domain. So I look for things that really illustrate that concept, but my favorite keyword for this card is control. You may find a different keyword that works for you. I'm going to stop saying that, I swear. But I really want you to go with your intuition, what feels right for you. The key, again, is just to pick one keyword that's going to represent this card. And don't worry, it doesn't have to be the perfect word. As we go through the cards, you'll probably find that your understanding of that card change and evolve over time. And you'll find that as you work with your tarot with training wheels as well. You'll find that one keyword in your mind sort of branches off like a mind map into multiple keywords. All right, enough about that. I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the Hierophant. And in this deck, it's called the High Priest. I often see the Hierophant as that symbol of tradition, of the rules, and of sometimes of dogma. And any of those words could work, but I really like tradition because it feels the most neutral. Things like dogma, priest, or pope, or hierophant, they all feel very specifically religious. And I don't necessarily think that the Hierophant, or in this case the High Priest, only speaks to religion. I think he speaks to any set system that is in place and has been in place for a long time. The established structure and power of the society that can be related to the church and to religious dogma. But oftentimes when a card like this comes up in a reading, I find that it's really speaking to where is there red tape? Where is there a system of authority where we're trying to follow the rules, or maybe we're feeling like we should buck the rules. And it's really around this idea of rules and like societal structure and that sort of thing that I really feel like the meaning of this card comes forward. Webster's Dictionary defines tradition as an inherited, established, or customary pattern of thought, action, or behavior, such as a religious practice or a social custom. And I think that's why this word works so well for the Hierophant. When we look at him in most traditional decks, he literally looks like a religious authority, like a pope or some sort of higher up figure. And we really see that here in the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition. This really very much looks like a pope with a couple of supplicants. I actually do really enjoy when a Hierophant card shows a couple of people who are like addressing or trying to access whatever it is that the Hierophant is blocking them from or holding away from them. I also like seeing keys and things that symbolize some sort of thing that he's holding on to that he's not giving easy access to. Because of course, when we're talking about tradition, it's again, following sort of a set of customized practices or beliefs, and often we can't just kind of go our own way because something's in the way saying, no, 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 you have to do it this way. So I love tradition for a word for that. When I look at the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, we have this delightful owl creature who is literally dangling a key in front of us. And here is the lock right here that looks like it opens a gate that we may want to walk through. And I think this really is a great way to illustrate this concept because, of course, it's really what we're trying to do is move forward. We're trying to get somewhere. We're trying to access something. And this little guy is acting like a bit of a roadblock, right? He's kind of being a gatekeeper. And actually, that's a perfect word as well, gatekeeper. A gatekeeper doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? So maybe gatekeeper stands out to you more than tradition, or maybe there's some other word that occurred to you as I was talking about how I would interpret this card. Again, the important thing is to pick one. I really like tradition and what it signifies here. That brings us to the Lovers. This is a tricky, tricky card because you'd think it'd be one of the easiest to read. Oh, sure, it's just the Lovers. It's a couple. It's love, it's romance, it's connection, it's marriage, it's bondage. Not bondage, it's a bond, right? It's all of those things. It's beautiful, it's a long-term relationship, blah, 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 blah. I very rarely see the Lovers come up in a reading and actually mean, oh, boom, long-term relationship, you're good now, check the box, you found your loved one forever. I don't think that's often what the Lovers speaks about. I often think the Lovers is more about choice, about how we choose to take a path in life and what taking that path means. Really, when you think about it, choosing a lover, a partner, or a spouse is a commitment to a way of life. You've decided that you're going to take this particular road and you're going to walk it with this particular person. And in that way, I feel like in a lot of cases, the Lover signifies choice, but it also signifies a commitment to that choice. And I like the word commitment here quite a lot because I feel like it doesn't have to be a romantic commitment. It's a commitment. You're choosing one thing, sometimes over something else. And when we look at historic tarots, we often actually see somebody trying to choose between two potential partners. So you really see that element of choice and then committing to that choice present in that card. Webster's Dictionary defines the word commitment as an agreement or pledge to do something in the future. Also, something pledged, or the state of or an instance of being obligated or emotionally impelled. The idea is that you are on that path. You have chosen that path, you're now going to walk it, and you have a responsibility to it. And I think commitment's a really great word for that because there is that sense. Yes, again, this can refer to romantic love for sure, and romantic commitment, but it can refer to all kinds of commitment. It could be a contract at work. It could be all kinds of ways where we have to make a decision and then commit to the outcome of that decision or the consequence of that decision. And I think that's a really expansive way to look at this card, and it really helps to kind of put it in its sort of place within a reading. Now, when we look at the Tattoo Tarot and Ink and Intuition and the Druidcraft Tarot, we see very obvious coupledom. We also see that here in the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. So I don't think there's a huge variety in how this particular card is depicted in the ones that I have chosen. It is clear, though, that these are all mates. They have mated, are mating. And in all cases, we have some sort of other element kind of blessing the commitment or offering some kind of approval. In the Lover's card in the Druidcraft, we have this sweet deer guide in the background that to me feels like nature is blessing this particular union. Over here, we have what looks like Cupid up in the corner, blessing, again, the commitment, the union. And when we see these two sweet little foxes having a moment, a tender moment, we have all these beautiful butterflies around. And so you can also kind of dive into that part of the meaning, if you will, as well, that this commitment is sort of looked on favorably by some higher power or some spirit guide. That can be a way to look at this card. But I love the word commitment. I think it really works here. Again, you do you. But that is the word that I want to share with you today. Either way, pick one, and I'm going to move on to the Chariot. Gosh, the Chariot has so much about it that I think is really, really super fascinating. But the primary force of the Chariot for me personally, and the way that I tend to read it, is the word drive. There's so much that goes around drive, right? But it's what propels us forward. What is it that is moving us? What is our impetus for forward movement, for trajectory? Sometimes what's driving us is habits, is status quo, is just whatever like norm or hamster wheel we've been running on. And sometimes it's an inspiration, and sometimes it's something meaningful that we're being driven by. Sometimes it's a belief or it's a desire, but something is driving us forward. What is that impetus? What is that thing that is pushing us forward? Now, there's obviously a lot more to the Chariot than that, but that gives us a real jumping off point to consider what the meaning might possibly be. Especially in a reading, I find that the Chariot often points to where a real need to exert one's will and to really be focused comes in. I think that a lot of times, because we see these opposite energies of the dark and the light horse, or in this case also a dark and a light horse, there's this idea of opposing forces and needing to kind of wrangle everything in, but to do so not through strength or physical prowess, but through actual focus and determination, that I think really makes sense here for the Chariot. So in Webster's dictionary, drive can mean a whole lot of things. Of course, it can mean actually driving a vehicle or something like that. But I'm going to go right to the meaning that is to give shape or impulse to, because that is the sort of meaning of drive that I like using in this particular context. It's the thing that defines why we're taking the actions we're taking or making the decisions we're making to move forward. And I think sometimes when this card comes up, it can also be an invitation to look into the why. Why is it that we're moving in this direction? Whereas here in the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition and in the Druidcraft Tarot, we see a really classic scene of a chariot driver in their chariot and two horses in front of them, one dark and one light, and this idea that they are wrangling them, that they are driving them forward with their focus and determination. That's great. Over here, though, in the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, we go a slightly different way. Here we have a bird, again, terrible with animal identification, and a little snail on top. And you kind of are wondering, or left to wonder, I feel like, which one is the charioteer and which one's the chariot. In other words, who's determining where we're going here? I think it's interesting because it calls into question what's happening and who's sort of driving the action. And I think that's good. It kind of asks us to question what's happening and why. Again, often in a reading, I really look at what is the drive? What is the driving force here? Is it you? Is it something you want? Is it somebody in your life? What's happening? And I think we really kind of get that here with the word drive. But if that doesn't feel right for you, pick another word or take a look at your favorite guidebook and see what it has to say. Let's look at strength. Now, strength can appear in position 8 or in position 11, depending on the deck. So in this case, as you can see in the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition, the number at the top is 11. But for the purposes of comparing, I've gone ahead and put it in this order because the other two decks have strength in position 8. Now, I'm not going to go down the whole rabbit hole of that because it's just different systems of tarot. I do believe that strength being in position 11 is a Marseille historic tradition as well as a Thoth tradition. I think the Rider-Waite-Smith is the only one that reverses the numbers. Beyond that, I don't have a lot of opinions about it. I see it most often in position number 8. Strength is a card that for me means fortitude. It's often about being faced with some kind of adversity and really powering through and learning from and growing from that experience. Oftentimes, I feel like the strength card comes up when some aspect of self has been harnessed or tamed in some way. And I love that idea of taming as part of the energy of this card. We often see the strength card featuring somebody who looks gentle paired with something that looks really ferocious, and this idea that the ferocious thing is fully under the control of the gentle thing. In this case, a woman and a boar. Over here, we have somebody figured here, also looks possibly like a woman, and a lion. And over here, we have a badger with a snake. Really super interesting cards. And we get the idea that with this artwork, there's still this idea of having overcome or been triumphant in some way. I really like the word fortitude, which is also a word that is used, I believe, in the Thoth Tarot instead of the word strength. I really like the word fortitude because I feel like it really encompasses the energy of this card. The word fortitude, according to Webster, strength of mind that enables a person to encounter danger or bear pain or adversity with courage. In other words, we're facing something hard and we're coming out of it stronger for it. We've gained some strength through that process. So often when I get this card in a reading for myself or a client, I often see strength as a representation of the way that we are moving through something challenging. And again, I often see that as some part of ourselves that we're having to befriend or harmonize with in order to move forward on our path. I really like the fact that these two are depicted, again, more traditionally, with the lion here and the boar here. But I love Oak, Ashes, and Thorns, very strong little brave badger here, facing up to this big snake, and it has its front paws sitting on the snake and is like, nope, you don't win this time. And I just think that's really potent and beautiful. But overall, the general energy of the Strength card is about fortitude, is about really facing something difficult and winning, really, essentially, being triumphant in that situation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the Hermit. As you can see here, my keyword for the Hermit is introspection. Here's the thing about the Hermit card. In many cards, he's depicted as an old, wise man, often high up on a mountaintop somewhere, shining a light for others. It really gives that feeling of having learned and grown and developed one's own self-knowledge so that you can then teach and share that knowledge with other people. That's where, to me, the shining of your light outward really shows up in the meaning of this card. So I often like seeing older hermits, ones that look like they've been through something. The reason I chose introspection as the word for this card is because that kind of knowledge, the knowledge where you can really shine a light for others, that doesn't happen without first shining a light inward and looking at yourself. And the Hermit as an archetype and as an idea is about going within. It's about pulling oneself away from the expectations of society and actually learning for yourself what is true. And then once you discover what is true, then sharing that outward. Webster's dictionary defines the word introspection as a reflective looking inward, an examination of one's own thoughts and feelings. And I think that's really perfect for the Hermit card, and it really encapsulates the energy of the card for me. It's a word that lets me really grow and develop with the meaning of this card and let it kind of build upon itself. And that's what I'm looking for in the kind of keyword I'm going to put on my training wheels deck. I would encourage you to pick a word that also works like that, that makes you think about what it means to sort of pull oneself away from society and learn enough, grow enough that you can then shine that light outward for others to follow. Now, in the artwork in the card, these two, high cliff top, shining a lamp outward all by themselves, although we do have a wolf guide here with the Hermit in the Druidcraft Tarot, which I really like. But when we move over a step, we have, this is such a beautiful Hermit card in my opinion, we have a beautiful little hedgehog here, and he's got a lightning bug in front of him and a staff beside him. But what really stands out to me is this really long, winding road stretching out behind him. You get the idea that he's been through all of this and now has wisdom to share. And that's what I'm looking for in a Hermit card. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the Wheel of Fortune. Ooh, we got an extra card kicking around here. That's for the next one. All right, so in the Wheel of Fortune, here in the Druidcraft Tarot, it's simply called the Wheel. Here in the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition, it looks very traditional, almost Marseille-like, very historic, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. And it looks completely different, and we'll definitely get into that over here in the Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot. I chose the word change. Now, in my experience, the Wheel of Fortune is the epitome of change in the tarot. It's our relationship with change. It's our relationship with fortune. When we experience luck, for example, or something goes our way, there's always the understanding that that is transient, that we can't be on top of the wheel forever. That something is always going to come along and shift the balance so that somebody else can be on top. You really see that in the more historic way of this card being depicted, where you have usually some sort of lion, or in this case, it looks like a sphinx on top. You have a monkey coming down and it looks like a dog going up. The idea is that somebody's always trying to get to the top, somebody's always on their way down, and somebody's always sitting on top. That's the more classical way of looking at this card. But for me, the wheel is just a constant wheel or cycle of change. That's how I've always viewed this card. Again, let's be honest, informed by my beginnings in tarot. But I love the word change here, and I love whenever this card comes up in a reading for myself or a client, really looking at the relationship with change. Are we comfortable with change? Are we resistant to change? What is our relationship with change? There's so much to learn from that one exploration or that one question. Now, I don't think I need to get into the Webster definition for change. It's essentially something's to make different, right? Something's going to go differently. But It's a basic word. It's just such a great word for exploring. When we look at this one often throws me in the Druidcraft Tarot because it looks like she's carving a circle. And it's interesting to contemplate. If we dive into the guidebook for this deck, we would probably find more information, but I want to avoid that for now. And let's just take it at face value. She is doing something active. So I could potentially take this as being she is creating her own change. She is crafting her own change. If you look at any Wheel of Fortune card, I hope that you find some aspect of this word in that card. That is, of course, the point of our Training Wheels deck, is that you see change in every Wheel of Fortune. You can see that wheel. You can understand that something's going to shift, and if it does, what is your relationship to that shift? That's how I like to work with the change card or with the Wheel of Fortune card. Artistically, as I mentioned, I already kind of talked through this one and this one. When it comes to the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, we have a owl up here who looks like it's just kind of watching all of this happen, and we have a spider web. And the web actually has the cardinal directions, north, south, west, and east. And then it has T-A-R-O, which is something that you'll see in a lot of Wheel of Fortune cards. That is a nod to traditional symbology. What's interesting to me is that the little mouse here is caught by the owl, and there's a snake here. Everybody's having kind of a different relationship with power in this image. So you get the idea that, well, the owl is in charge at the moment, maybe, because it has grip of the tail of the mouse, but the snake could come and snatch the mouse from the owl or go for the owl. So you get this idea that everything is tentative, right? Nothing is secure in that way. Things are shifting, something is changing. Okay, it's homework time. So to build on the exercise of getting our first 10, 11, I guess, keywords down in cards 0 through 10, the wheel, from the Major Arcana, now it's time to really solidify these meanings for yourself. So in your journal, typed out, or even in a voice memo to yourself, explore for yourself how the Fool and your keyword of choice, in my case, risk, might mean the same thing. How might they be in alignment with one another? How might a Fool represent the element of risk? How might a Magician represent the element of manifestation, or the High Priestess of intuition, the Lady or the Empress of creation, the Lord or the Emperor of control, the Hierophant or the High Priest of tradition, the Lovers of commitment, the Chariot of drive, Strength of fortitude, the Hermit of introspection, and the Wheel of change. If you really sit with these concepts, and even if you take the Fool and the names of the tarot cards out of it completely, if you just journal your thoughts on risk, what is your relationship with risk or with manifestation, etc., and go through these 11 keywords, but take some time to see what resonates for you. And ideally, at the end of that exercise, you'll have a more cohesive idea of what each of these cards represents energetically. Yes, there is so much more to each of these cards than just one word, one keyword. But remember, this is tarot with training wheels. We're just trying to build a relationship with the energy of the card. We can always build on, expand on, even alter our perception of this card later. For now, we want something that we can use right away to have readings, to play, and that's what the point of this is. Don't forget, if you're enjoying Tarot with Training Wheels, I do have a even more in-depth course available on supportivetarot.com called Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners that you're more than welcome to check out. But in the meantime, I will see you in the next lesson. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget to click the little notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos, including our next lesson. Thank you so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.